You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristadoulou.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristadoulou, and I'm coming at you all with another draft preview, and this time I am talking about the reigning, defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, going over a couple of players I would like to see them go after in this year's draft. So, Chiefs fans, comment down below. Let me know, how are you feeling about this year's draft class? Who do you want to see this team go after in that class? And let me know your thoughts and opinions on the couple of guys I give you here. But we're going to dive right in. First selection I'm going to go over here is a day 2 selection for the Chiefs, a guy that I think would be a really solid addition to the wide receiver corps, and mainly because the idea behind this is that you can bring him in and you don't necessarily have to rush him out there because you have so much talent. When you think about having Marquez Valdes-Scantling, you traded for Kadarius Toney last year, and he showed some versatility as long as he can stay healthy. I think he can be a legitimate contributor to that offense. And then obviously Travis Kelce, who is your number one target at the tight end position. You don't necessarily need him to come in. Oh, and I can't forget Sky Moore. All-around playmaker, a guy that I think is going to have an even larger role going into this next season. But, of course, it gives you the opportunity to bring in a wide receiver somewhere within that day 2, and this one I'm thinking is probably second round selection, but it lets you bring somebody in that does not necessarily need to step in and contribute immediately. It allows you to bring in somebody who might be slightly more of a project just because of some limitations within what they did in college, and I'm looking at wide receiver Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee, the 6'3", 213-pound physical beast of a wide receiver. I really think that this would be a nice addition for the team because it adds another large body dynamic to your team where you have a lot of speedsters. Obviously, you have Marquez Valdes-Scantling, but I really, really like the physicality that Cedric Tillman brings to the table for this team here. He's excellent when it comes to run blocking as well, and it's very obvious that Isaiah Pacheco is going to find a real, I would say, star within the NFL, and you want to have guys that are willing to block for him. Isaiah Pacheco is a beast. He can run on his own and be very aggressive, but why not focus on maybe getting him more to the outside, running him to the side that Cedric Tillman's on, blowing up those DBs, opening up some holes for him. I would love to see a guy like this on the field for them, and he's also a very sure-handed wide receiver at that. He might not be the fastest in the world, and for a guy who plays predominantly outside with a handful of snaps here and there within the slot, and he did really only play on the right side of Tennessee's offense, he's very sure-handed. He has only 5 drops on 104 total targets throughout his collegiate career. I think that you can't really argue matching him up with a guy like Patrick Mahomes, who is going to get that football to him and put it in a place where only he can catch it. I think a guy like Cedric Tillman, who has those short hands, would be a phenomenal target for this team to add. And like I said, not necessarily the most elite speed, fast, but not quite as fast as you might want a guy who's going to be playing more so the outside than anything else, considering that's where he was playing for the most part while he was in Tennessee. And his route tree is not quite as advanced as you might want him to be, and that's more so just because of what Tennessee did offensively with their scheme. But like I mentioned, to start with this kind of conversation here, this is about bringing in a guy who has some really exciting traits that does not need to step in and be a contributor, or at least like a bona fide contributor right away from the jump. It gives him time to learn the offense, maybe learn some more routes and get more comfortable with playing on the left side of the offense. Because again, he pretty much was only on the right side the entire time he was playing at Tennessee. You want him to have some time to really get comfortable with what you're going to have him do there. So you bring him in, pressure's not on him, but he does have some really exciting traits and some that I think would match up really well with just how good of a gunslinger Patrick Mahomes is. He's got the cannon. He can put that ball wherever it needs to be. And I think that that would be a very fun piece for the Chiefs offense down the road as he gets more and more accustomed and acclimated to the offense. As for the other selection I'll be discussing here, I'm talking about what I want to see the Chiefs do with pick number 31. They're picking last in the first round, but remember, there's only 31 selections this year because the Dolphins had to give up their first round pick because of some tampering with Tom Brady a few years ago. For me, I'm looking at the defensive side of the ball here, and obviously, Frank Clark is still sitting out in the free agency wilderness. You may be able to bring him back on a cheaper deal. I don't know. Obviously, there's time between now and the start of the season. Anything could happen, but he has not gone anywhere just yet. And I know that you brought in Charles Omenihu, so maybe that was the signing to mitigate that loss. But I would be pretty stoked to see them kind of fortify that defensive line even more with a guy who I think should be available at the end of the first round, just depending on kind of how chips fall and what happens in the early portion of the draft, especially with like those first like 10 picks. If it goes very quarterback heavy, it's going to obviously eat up some of the selections there. And let's say, hypothetically speaking, if you go 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the first round, which I don't think is going to happen, but is possible, it does leave some more defenders on the board. It leaves other positions on the board, and you're more likely to see this guy, and potentially, I'm talking edge rusher Lucas Van Ness. I think that this would be a very intriguing prospect because you can bring him in, and yes, he's a first-round selection, but you're picking him in the first round at pick number 31. That's where you start getting to the point where, yes, your guy is a first-round pick, but he's just as close to a second-round selection as he is a first, and you don't necessarily need him to step in. Again, this is a similar thought process with the wide receiver selection I just talked about before in Cedric Tillman. You don't need him to come in and be a day one contributor right off the rip, doing everything that you would possibly need from him. No, you can let him do kind of what George Karlaftis did. He comes in, yeah, he was effective in spots, but he really started to grow into his role in the back half of the season, and that's kind of what I envision here for Lucas Van Ness as well. Now, obviously, this really gets chalked up to, is he even going to be available? There is obviously a possibility. He's not here, but my thought process is, in this scenario, if he's there, you're grabbing him. Even if it's not him, I would really like the idea of an edge rusher. Yes, you brought in Omenihu to kind of mitigate the loss of Frank Clark if he doesn't get brought back again. A lot could happen between now and the start of next season. But for someone who's just so athletic, he has fantastic power. His nickname is literally Hercules because he is an absolute unit. He's 6'5", 272, but has all the agility that you could possibly ask for a guy of his size and stature. He literally looks like a professional bodybuilder almost, like with just like how well carved out he is. And as somebody who's in the fitness world myself, yeah, I can really appreciate that kind of stuff. Because, you know, you think D lineman, especially a guy at 272, you don't think of somebody as chiseled as this guy is. So despite that, I mean, like I said, your biggest things that you want to just concern yourself with is giving him time because he only had a couple of years in college, so he does need some more time to maybe sharpen up his toolbox a little bit. And from what I've read through scouting reports, he did rely very heavily on just how much more of a powerful player he was to some of the other collegiate players that he was going up against. So is he probably going to have to learn a little bit more in terms of just how he's going to attack offensive linemen? Yes, you're going up against grown men now at this point, guys who have man strength. You know, he's a young man. He's not necessarily quite where he'll be in the next few years, so it's going to take him some time to get acclimated. He does have a really good spin move, though, and again, he's known for his bull rush, so if he can just add a few more tools to the box, maybe brush up on some technique stuff, this is a guy who I think could be phenomenal even towards like the back half of the year going into like year 2 and 3. Again, you don't put the pressure on him. He does not have to absolutely deliver day one. He gets to learn the system, get comfortable with what's going on over there. And Kansas City has the coaching staff, and I'm really impressed with what they've been able to do on the defensive, like within like the front seven altogether, but especially on the defensive line. They were the second most in sacks last year. So they clearly have a unit and a coaching staff that can get their guys to where they need to be. Give him time. He doesn't need pressure. You brought in Omenihu for a reason. He comes in, maybe halfway through the season starts to take over once he really gets going and catches on to what you're doing there defensively, and you get to build towards the future. Would it be awesome to see Frank Clark come back on a cheap deal if the market doesn't really call for his services? Sure. Or at least maybe he doesn't wind up getting more money than maybe he thought he was going to get, or the amount of money he thought he may get going into free agency. But I like the idea of building through the draft, and the Kansas City Chiefs are just so good at it too with the amount of rookies they had in starting positions, or at least just getting significant snaps last year. I look at the Chiefs as a team where they clearly have it figured out, where they have a really good mix of veterans. They're bringing in guys, and they don't necessarily have to get going from the jump. They get some time to get acclimated and get comfortable, and then by like mid-season, they're really starting to be contributors. So if there's a team where I'm thinking, you know, I like this guy, but he needs a little bit of time just to kind of get himself ready to go, it's the Chiefs to send them to, because they have the formula, it feels like right now at least, figured out. Yes, you obviously have a great offense and everything that's going on over there, but you had a lot of young guys contribute on the back half of the year for that defense. And I think Van Ness, given some time, could be a similar guy for that same thing. Come like week 7, 8, 9, 10, once he's feeling good, he'll be ready to go and deliver for you in big spots. George Karlaftis certainly did, so I don't see why not. But that's what I would like to see as far as a couple of selections from the Chiefs go. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on my thoughts and opinions, or just who you would like to see the Chiefs go after. But that's it for me. I appreciate you all for watching. If you made it to the end of the video, I will see you all in another video. Have a good one.